Hey, thanks for checking out The Solid Verbal. Now would be a great time to subscribe to the channel for college football content all off season long.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildenbrandt. That fine gentleman over there is always the one, the only, always the incomparable, with a power tool today.
Yeah.
Dan Rubenstein, sir. How you doing?
I'm good, Ty. It's my half birthday. Which is thematic, and normally I probably wouldn't remember it, or maybe in a fleeting moment, like, oh yeah, I'm so-and-so and a half today. But my older son's birthday was yesterday, his 4th birthday, and so then I, paired them in my mind that were exactly 6 months and a day apart. So today is my half birthday, which when I grew up, we got donuts. For my brothers and I got donuts for our half birthday. I don't know if you celebrated your half birthday, if that was a deal, but any excuse for something sweet when you're a kid is good enough.
Sure, of course.
I have no plans for donuts today, though. If somebody is watching this live, maybe at the next live show, you can bring me donuts in lieu of something else. But I wanted to go thematic with today's show, which is why we're talking about half teams, Ty. So I just wanted to get that right out in the open. In case anybody listening thought, man, does Dan have an extra bit of zazz in his voice today? It's because, yes, I am hoping against hope that my wife comes home with donuts today. That's all.
Well, look, happy half birthday to you.
Thank you.
As you stare down the barrel of the big 4-0, not to give too much away.
Yeah, I'm in my mid to late 30s, Ty. It's official.
You're still there,
Yep.
at least for another 6 months. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for stopping on by, for downloading the show. Now securely in our college football offseason, Dan and I have begun the important process of the postmortem. Not just with our show, but with the big show that was college football in the 2022 college football season. So we've got some half-team stuff that we're going to get through. We got not a game, but a thematic experience, let's say, that we're going to walk you through here in a few moments' time. Don't forget, Verballers.com is where you can go to get access to our super secret community.
Ooh.
Don't forget, we've got a Discord, we've got early access, we've got bonus perks and some stuff that, gosh, we're still working on here. The off season just got here. So we are excited about what the next couple months have in store. We will be, of course, very, very busy and, of course, very plugged into the Verballerhood that exists out there on Patreon. Not just on Patreon, of course, the public Verballerhood as well. Make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you tell your friends. Make sure you hang with us all throughout the off season, broadcasting twice a week. The show does not stop just because the games have stopped. We've got all sorts of college football news and draft stuff, and you name it, Dan. College football is a year-round sport these days, is it not?
There's 173 teams, Ty, minus a couple.
We
got a lot to talk about in the off season, so we're very excited. That's when we try to stretch our creative muscles, at least as taut as they go.
So taut.
That's I think a good summary. Listen to Extra Nuggets, by the way, another show in the Solid Verbal universe.
Yes,
it's me and Adam Amin,
a
trivia-based show. Yeah,
like a top 60 comedy podcast.
That's not bad. I'll take it. So extranuggets.show to learn more about that brand new podcast that I think you'll enjoy. Should we talk about today's show, or is there any other housekeeping you want to discuss? There's news. Like Alabama needs an offensive coordinator. That's pretty big.
There is some news. Yeah, I was hoping maybe we could get into more detail on that on our next episode. But for sure, there's news about Bill O'Brien. There's news about Deion Sanders, doing his thing on the recruiting trail. We're going to send a newsletter out tomorrow about afternoon-ish. If you're going out to, I think it's just quickslants.solidverbal.com is where you can go and subscribe to that. We're going to send out sort of the news since we last covered it here on the show. But in addition to Bill O'Brien and Deion Sanders, there's just so much going on right now, man. Really, it's a year-round thing now.
It is. I saw that Deion has had a number of transfers and recruits visit or claim to visit. There was a weird story with the recruit saying, I'm in Boulder. And his parents were like, no, you're not. I don't know if you saw that. That was fun. But yes, it's an exciting time. Even if it seems like a downtime, there's no such thing as a downtime in college football. So yeah, some high profile coaching openings that are yet to be filled. I guess, really geolocated in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. But yeah, we'll talk about that coming up soon, especially when there's more clarity. I saw Jeff Lebby's name came up, given where SEC offenses appear to be heading. So I would expect a very fast and wide open type offense to be brought in or continued at its best in Alabama. So
we know it won't be Jim Leonard as offensive coordinator. We know that.
Won't be Jim Leonard as offensive coordinator. Correct.
That much we know, but beyond that, a lot remains to be seen.
Portal's closed, by the way.
Portal's closed. Closed for business.
Portal's closed. There's people already in making visits and making decisions, but the next one I think is early May is the next portal opening. So there's that.
If you're in the portal, you're trapped in limbo, a little bit like Leo in Inception. You're just stuck there.
Yeah.
Stuck there for a couple months till we can get everything sorted out.
Yes.
On today's show, we're talking half teams, man. Half teams.
Yeah.
Dan, what's a half team on your half birthday?
It's one of our favorite topics. Teams that do one thing extraordinarily well, offense or defense. Now, special teams is a major component of college football, but for this exercise, we're saying one half is offense, one half is defense, since those are the units that play the overwhelming majority of the snaps during a game. And so if a team is able to field an incredible, laser-like efficient or explosive offense, but just can't get it figured out on defense, like kind of catastrophic on defense, that's a half team. Or if you flip it, Iowa, and you consistently mount a lockdown, death grip defense, but cannot figure out offense at all. And my classic example, just because I remember watching at least 3 or 4 games, was the 2015 Missouri team. Oh, yeah. There's been a couple Boston College teams in there. Obviously, Cliff Kingsbury era Texas Tech. There have been some stretches of half teams going both directions. But this year's Iowa was as dramatic a half team as we've seen. The metric we're using is points per drive, which eliminates garbage time. Also, it adjusts for tempo, because you can be a really slow team who doesn't score a lot of points, but if you score every time you have the ball, you're a great scoring team. So I'm excited to look at the teams we are going to look at, what they did well, what they didn't do well, and whether or not optimism is the right place to be emotionally and mentally heading into 2023.
Optimism is a hell of a drug, man.
I know.
And college football runs on hopium. We know that. Mm-hmm. That's just sort of the way this thing goes. As of now, everybody undefeated. As of now, everybody talking about things they can do to improve upon next season. So we thought maybe it'd be fitting to go through some of the teams that we maybe enjoyed dunking on the most, the half teams. We love half teams here.
We do. We talked about it on our Brew and A show on verballers.com a couple weeks ago, how that comes to be, that a coach can be so good at hiring and recruiting and figuring out a vision for one side of the ball and then get it completely wrong. And sometimes it's out of a coach's hands, right? Sometimes it's a catastrophic injury or 11 to a side of the ball, and you just have to throw up your hands and say, it's not going to happen this year. But in a lot of these examples that we're going to talk about, it's not a new thing for these specific coaches to have struggles on a specific side of the ball. So it's I think it was a fun conversation we had. You can go check that out at verballers.com. I think it was a couple weeks ago on that Q&A show. So yeah, this is something that's always fascinating to us.
We've got 5 half teams that we're going to go through today. I focused my energy on each of the offenses.
Yes.
So in some cases, the offenses were really good. In other cases, the offenses were really bad. You are playing the role of defensive coordinator here. You are playing the role of Jim Leonard.
Sure. All-time DC. Yeah.
All-time DC here on the episode. And to kick things off, we've got a sound. I believe we've got a sound, yes?
Oh, yeah. I mean, ultimately, all of these teams, they're not looking for a lot, right? They're looking for morsels. They're looking for just the bare minimum on one side of the ball after they've got the other side figured out. They're looking for...
Can you fly this plane and land it?
That's all they're looking for, right? They're looking for Leslie Nielsen at 30,000 feet, looking for a potential pilot. Yeah, that's what they're looking for. So whether this year it's going to be through the portal, adding a ton of bodies, through the recruiting trail, through overhauling the coaching staff, through just getting healthier, who is going to become closer to a full team of these 5? So
here are the 5 teams that we've got. We've got USC, we've got Oregon, we've got North Carolina, we've got Iowa, and we've got Texas A&M, Dan.
Yeah, a lot of drama here. You know I like the drama. Lot of drama.
There's a lot of drama. Where do you want to start? Where should we start? Should we start with Oregon?
We can start with Oregon, for sure.
I want to start with Oregon. So Oregon went, 9-3 regular season?
Yeah.
won the bowl game, obviously won the bowl game over North Carolina, who we're also going to discuss here in a few moments' time. Oregon on offense, 5th per the points per drive metric, 96th in terms of defense. So a bit of a disparity, a delta, if you will. Bo Nix on offense had an enormous season. That was really where the conversation went, I think, for most people when they talked about Oregon. His completion percentage was nearly 12 points higher last season than it had been in 2021. So a huge deal. Huge deal coming up from Auburn. He accounted for 43 touchdowns, Dan, which, if you do the math, is more than his previous 2 seasons at Auburn combined. The line in front of him, I think, was solid. The ground game was very physical. Oregon did not kill itself with turnovers, which was a big deal. That was one of the things to watch with Bo Nix. Is he going to do the thing where he shoots his team in the foot? He didn't for the most part. The defense, which I know you're going to talk about, had a ball hawking mentality, which maybe covers up some of the sins that I'm sure you will discuss. But across the board, I think if you're an Oregon fan, just a lot to like, right? Recruiting's been great. The portal has been great. They did lose Kenny Dillingham to ASU. Will Stein is going to be the new guy on offense. I know we're not here so much to talk about offense, but do you like the Will Stein hire?
I do, yes. I think it'll be very, very good. He did a great job at UTSA. They're going to take shots downfield. I think it's going to be a little bit more RPO-ish than it was last year with Kenny Dillingham, but from people who would know are excited for him and his offensive architecture. Yeah.
So not a whole lot to report on the offensive side. It was, I think, by and large, a very successful season on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah. So what's interesting about Oregon is relative to how they've recruited and relative to how the offense, the specifics of the Oregon offense this year, which was incredibly efficient, especially on the ground. The offensive line was great. Bo Nix was protected. They didn't turn the ball over a ton. The defense was put in an incredible position to be average, be average, just get stops at the replacement rate, and they didn't. Oregon could not get off the field on defense. They couldn't get pressure on the quarterback. Linebackers were abused from really the jump. If you watched any of that Georgia game, just Ladd McConkey is still shedding everybody running the wrong direction in that Oregon linebacking core from this past year. Michael Penix shredded the secondary. If you remember, just a lot of late rotations in that Washington game. And when Oregon had that 3-touchdown lead against Oregon State, that defensive front could not fill a gap. They were awful. And this was a team that is not without talent. They've recruited extremely well under Dan Lanning, for his brief time as head coach. And obviously Mario Cristobal stacked impressive classes. But when you look at it, what went wrong with Oregon's defense is, maybe it's a 3 coordinators in 3 years thing. Andy Avalos, Tim DeRuyter, and now Tosh Lupoy. Sure. But that happens at a lot of places. A lot of coaching turnover is just the norm. But they just didn't have it up front. Linebackers it was probably the most disappointing position group in recent Oregon memory relative to expectations, with Justin Flo and Noah Sewell, 2 5-star linebackers who are expected to sort of man the linebacking core.
And are gone now, right? They're gone.
And are both gone.
Yeah.
The secondary, across from Christian Gonzalez, who is gone because he declared for the NFL, he was arguably the best or one of the 2 best corners in the Pac-12 with Clark Phillips. He was a lockdown corner. He was the brightest spot by far of this Oregon defense. And so they couldn't get it figured out. They had the brief moment against Utah in which there were rumors of Dan Lanning kind of taking over more control from Tosh Lupoy when they shut Utah down and forced a bunch of turnovers. And what they did against UCLA was impressive, though they had to steal a possession via onside kick. It was a team that, until essentially the bowl game against a depleted North Carolina team, didn't show a lot of what an average defense would show. The good news is there's good reason for optimism for 2023, right? It's year 2 of the system, so there's more familiarity. The portal has been hit relatively hard. They got an Iowa transfer at linebacker. Jordan Birch is the big name up front, a former 5-star from South Carolina. They're hitting the portal pretty hard in the secondary. Evan Williams, who's the younger brother of an outgoing safety, comes in from Fresno State, relatively highly regarded, if that's English. And they're still going for more dudes in the portal on defense. And they return a ton up front on defense. If that's a good thing, there'll be a ton of upperclassmen there. And they bring in, take a second to breathe, 10 defensive linemen in this current recruiting class.
So they're going hard at it. My question, though, is this.
They're throwing everything. And they hired Tulane's defensive coordinator. He's now a co-defensive coordinator and the safeties coach. So they are not taking this lying down. They see the issue and they are throwing everything at it to get it rectified.
My question is this, though. All right.
Yeah.
So we obviously had some underperforming linebackers that you think had a fair amount to do with some of the troubles that Oregon saw. First year of a system. I think these things are all very natural assumptions, right? You look at, in retrospect, what went down, and of course the results, they make sense to a degree. But 96 is pretty low.
Yeah.
That's pretty low. It seems to me like it's more than just one position group underperforming or the first year of the system. I mean, how specifically do we fix this?
It's pressure. It's all pressure because, and you know this better than I, because you watched Kayvon Thibodeau play for your NFL team. He was a one-man destroyer of worlds. He was a horror story. And so when you have that type of gravity on the edge, your secondary can be okay. Your linebackers can be all right, because if he is just that much of a problem, it's the tide that raises all ships. And so they didn't have that guy this year. They, whether it was DJ Johnson, whether it was Mace Funa, they had guys they tried out in that edge role. If you watch any of that Washington game, if you watch any of the Georgia game, they were just not getting pressure on the quarterback in any of their games, really. And so they addressed it. They've got guys coming in from both the portal and the trail. We'll see if that makes a difference. They brought pressure on Drake May, and that seemed to make a difference. A lot of more blitzing from different angles. But Drake May was without his top receiver in that game too, right? There's always context to everything. So that's the thing. And that's sort of the common thread when we talk about defenses that are unable to do anything well. It's either a talent thing, it's either a pressure thing, or it's either a coordinator completely unable to fix basic things over the course of the season. For Oregon, I don't think it's a talent thing, and I don't think it's a coaching thing. I really don't. I really genuinely think the lack of pressure, and maybe to a lesser extent, there was a talent issue at linebacker. But no, if they're able to generate even, again, an average or below average amount of pressure as compared to what they were able to do or not able to do last year, you'll talk about a different defense entirely this year.
Yeah, and you know what? It's the same deal on offense. I'm going to talk about some offenses.
Yeah.
We often make the joke, the David Pollock quote, it all starts up front. It all does start up front. That's the case on the offensive side of the ball. In some cases, it's coaching. In some cases, it's playmakers. But it is really fairly basic on some level. You could get into scheme and what different coaches try to accomplish, but really it's not that complicated.
Well,
and sometimes you can see it coming a mile away.
It's even less complicated, and this is true of all the struggling defenses we'll talk about. It's can you defeat the human in front of you? Yeah. And do you have the most humans who defeat the most humans the most often?
I think that's right.
It turns out the team who was able to do that the most this year won the national championship.
That's right. 2-time defending national champion.
Yeah.
Georgia Bulldogs. Yeah. To your point from earlier, though, about the pass rush for Oregon, just to put it in context, 127th in the nation in sack rate. This is per some of the advanced numbers we have access to. 74th in terms of pressure rate, 115th in terms of blitzes per drop back. So in some cases, didn't even try. Right?
No.
Knew they couldn't make it.
Didn't
even try.
Corners on an island. Yeah.
Didn't even try. So you're optimistic then about Oregon. You feel
I am. Yeah. The schedule works out well. They don't have any like crazy back-to-backs, even though they have some good quarterbacks on the schedule. Caleb Williams comes to Autzen. They have a little bit of time and a bye week before they travel to Seattle to play Michael Penix and Washington. And it's there's some key pieces up front gone for Washington. So I think there's reason for at least suitable optimism.
Yeah, and to further your point, tackle success rate, which is something else that we like to look at. Are you defeating the human in front of you in open space?
Yeah.
They were above average, Oregon was.
Yeah, and they improved over the course of the year.
And they got better.
Yeah.
And they got better. So I think
until the Oregon State game,
Until the Oregon State game. So look, you mentioned UNC. You mentioned Drake May. I want to go there next because UNC was another one of these half teams that was on the radar for a good chunk of the season, 21st in terms of points per drive on the offensive side of the ball. By the way, can you play the transition sound that we decided we were going to...
Oh, yeah. When work needs to be done, Ty, and it clearly needs to be done, you just need to take action.
That is not a soundboard sound. You actually have a drill there by you.
Yeah, I've been hanging acoustic panels in this little office. Yeah.
Give me one more, just one more pull.
You want more? Oh,
Just
God,
one more. There you go.
We're probably
Conserve the
scaring
battery.
some dogs and children. Yeah.
Conserve the battery.
Sorry.
UNC 21st points per drive on offense, 109th on defense. This is a team that went 9-3 regular season. They lost the conference championship game pretty handily to Clemson. Then they lost to your Oregon Ducks in the Holiday Bowl.
Yes.
28-27. Was that the final?
Yes. Last second.
Yeah.
Chase Coda, excuse me.
Chase Coda.
Yeah. Chase Coda. Chad Coda is another Coda.
Chad
Chase
Coda's-
Coda gets it on the goal line on 4th down and gets it in.
That's right. So the offense was great, right? The offense was great. They started things off on the right foot by picking Drake May to be the starting quarterback over Jacoby Criswell. That was one of those preseason decisions that clearly worked out for Mac Brown. He threw for over 4,100 yards. He had 35 touchdowns through the air. He had 7 on the ground. He was the team's leading rusher. And this was all despite the fact that the line, though experienced and stable, it was a lot of the same guys. It wasn't all that great. The numbers from a line standpoint really weren't that great for North Carolina. Drake May was just so good that he was able to overcome it. My main critique of the offense, and there aren't a whole lot, it is that they were almost too dependent on Drake May.
Yeah, it was all May.
It was all. If he had gotten hurt, we'd be talking about a much different story this past season.
Sure.
But thankfully, he withstood the pressure. He withstood, opposing defenses coming for him on every play. And North Carolina was able to get the job done on that side of the ball. The point in the season, though, that I think we will study is as we got into, I believe, week 12, Carolina blew a 17-point lead against Georgia Tech. And it doesn't seem like from that point forward they ever fully recovered.
No.
They lost that game to Tech. They lost the next week against NC State. They lost the following week in the conference championship game, as I said earlier, against Clemson, and then they lost the bowl game against Oregon. So whatever took place in that Georgia Tech game, I don't know if that was their 1-2-3 Cancun moment of the year, but whatever happened in week 12, they never got over that.
Well,
never got over that.
Drake May didn't look like a Heisman Trophy candidate.
No.
And still looked fine, but did not look like a Heisman Trophy candidate. And when the entire plane is built out of Drake May and the material seems to be a little bit flimsier than normal. God, these are very tenuous analogies
You're trying.
here.
It's an E for effort.
Thank you. Then everything's going to fall apart. And so what we saw it early from North Carolina, right? Even that first game was against Florida A&M this year.
No.
The Florida A&M game, and then App State was a disaster. The shootout in the 60s? Is that what I'm seeing here, correct?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
63-61? That's
Crazy.
not a typo?
Crazy.
So that was an indication, all due respect to App State and Chase Bryce, that something might still be amiss even after hiring Gene Chizik to run the defense. Again, hiring Gene Chizik to run the defense. And so what we got out of North Carolina was some okay defensive performances halfway through the year, but really this was not a defense that could be counted on for anything consistently positive. And the biggest thing too, and it comes back to what we talked about with Oregon, zero pressure. It was just arguably the worst pass rushing team in America. And this is a North Carolina program that has recruited very well under Mac Brown, relatively speaking. They had some down years at the end of the Larry Fedora era, but this is Mac Brown's roster, and he has not figured it out up front. He didn't figure it out with his first defensive coordinator hire in Jay Bateman. He has not figured it out in the early going with Gene Chizik, whether it's a vision for what the scheme should be, or the type of players they're recruiting, or the type of, the situational blitzing, whatever. They have nothing. They have nothing when it comes to the pass rush. And so it was not an ACC stacked with killers at quarterback. The Pac-12, at least you can say you got Caleb Williams, you have DTR, you have Cam Rising, you have Bo Nix, right? There's some excuse to be like, look, you're going to take some lumps from these Pac-12 offenses. Not the case in the ACC with the quarterbacks on hand. It was kind of, I apologize for any sort of erasure here, but in terms of consistent excellence, was it Jordan Travis and
Yeah.
who am I missing?
Yeah.
Am I missing? Sam Hartman was really good for stretches, but had some catastrophic stretches. So what North Carolina's defense was not able to do, and then how they've been hit in the portal. And look, it's January 25th, my half birthday once again. They have not made appreciable changes. They have not made dramatic portal acquisitions, and they have not fired and brought in new coaches or just tried to tweak things. Maybe it'll happen at another point, but the secondary is kind of all gone. Storm Duck is off to Penn State. Tony Grimes, the former 5-star, he's off to Texas A&M. They lost other key guys in the portal in the secondary. The positive about North Carolina is they've got a linebacking duo that's kind of incredible, but it's also a do-everything duo. That's the whole thing. It's funny. They've got the quarterback on offense. They've got these two guys, Cedric Gray and Power Eccles, on defense. And you feel for them, but that's it. That's it for North Carolina right now. And so I don't know why. No matter what the offenses in the ACC look like next year, I don't know why you can look at this roster and look at the results from this past year and say to yourself, they're going to turn the page and just get it done this year. They're going to be fine. They're going to identify the weak spots and really lock in that. I don't see it. I don't see it at all.
Yeah. I mean, it hurts to lose a pair of corners in Tony Grimes and Storm Duck.
Sure. They lost more than that in the secondary too, though.
They lost more. Yeah. They lost the safety, right? They lost alignment. Like it will be interesting to see what they do. I know they recruited particularly, I don't know, maybe I'm giving them more credit than they deserve, but they did well. They had a couple of 4-stars that they brought in as part of this class to help with that rush, to help along the defensive line. But, you know, if it's not one thing, it's another. Secondary will now obviously be the focus, trying to figure out what to do on the back half of that defense.
It doesn't matter, though. Like, you can have, like, I'm sure Tony Grimes and Storm Duck let up big passes, whatever, big completions. There was no pass rush once again.
If you can't get pressure, that's a problem.
So that's deflating all of those corners numbers. And it's also, honestly, you might want to go back and look at any of the offensive linemen, whatever it's PFF. You want to, any offensive lineman in the ACC graded out against North Carolina is probably looking wonderful. It's substitute teacher grading. And so I loved watching Drake May this year. What an incredible talent. An incredible thrower. He and Josh Downs, an immediate incredible connection. And you can understand why there was at least little mumblings, Ty. Oh, maybe George is offering a bunch of money. Why Drake May rumors would persist.
He could have gone anywhere he wanted.
Transferring, and to get Drake May in the playoff, to get Drake May on a big stage in November, you can understand why it would behoove Drake May to look around if he weren't so, locked into North Carolina with his lineage. So too bad, man, because
he could have gone any school in America, maybe outside of USC.
Sure.
There's a handful of schools that would not have started Drake May over their current guy.
Yeah.
He's that good.
So look, happy to be wrong. Would love to be shocked and appalled at how great North Carolina's defense improves this year. It's hard to carry the 4 and bring over the 2 and find where that's happening. It really is.
Where do you want to go next? Give me the power drill, please. Thank you, Dan. Let's do some work.
Let's go with a defense that actually performed, because I'm kind of tired again of railing on these guys. Let's go with a defense that performed, an offense that didn't hold up their end of the bargain, and the face that would be on the half-team trophy this year would be Kirk Ferentz's in the Iowa Hawkeyes.
Let's talk about Iowa. Talk about Iowa. We're framing everything out in terms of points per drive.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa on offense was 121st in points per drive, first on defense, which is crazy. I can't remember a disparity that large since we've been doing this.
It's wild.
Just incredible to me. Still, they went 7-5 in the regular season. Still, they went to a bowl game. They beat Kentucky in that awful game, 21-0.
Mm-hmm.
So on some level, it works, but on another level, it's concerning. Iowa, here's where this program's at in terms of offense, okay? Iowa won the Big Ten West in 2021. And coming out of that, essentially doubled down on everything. All the same strategies, the same staff, everything on offense going into 2022. It's not like this was a killer offense in 2021, but it worked. It worked well enough to get them to a spot. Notably, it got way worse this past season.
Mm-hmm.
It was not good. As we just mentioned, 121st, it was not good in 2022. That is why they are featured in this episode. So let me start here.
Yeah.
What is Iowa's identity on offense?
It's ball control, right? It's the big offensive lineman. It's Tristan Wirfs, right? It's guys like that. Big offensive linemen opening up holes, running off tackle, hitting tight ends. You know, they had the 2 tight ends drafted a couple years ago. And, here, you ready? TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant, folks.
Boom!
Those names will be out of my brain in 3.5 months, but they still reside in my cerebral
They're still
cortex.
there. They're still, and you're not wrong with that answer.
Right.
Notably, though, they did ask Brian Ferentz about this back in 2021, almost the same question.
Right.
What is the identity of this offense? Quote, we need to be a group that can support the team and win games however we need to win those games. You got it?
Yeah.
That makes sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
That's not really an answer. That's sort of a political statement there.
Yeah.
The next best thing, though, outside of asking you and Brian Ferentz, is what did opposing teams think of the Iowa identity on offense?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer there, again, is our favorite David Pollock quote. It starts up front. It starts up front, particularly the interior portion of that offensive line. They get the push. At the point of attack, everything flows from there. Everything works. That means holes for the running game, right? That means the play action works. They love bootlegs. That means the bootleg can work. I saw a comment from a coach a couple years ago who said it actually can be very hard to game plan against a good version of the Iowa offense because everything sort of looks the same.
Yeah.
There aren't any tendencies that you can hang your hat on. Everything looks the same, which makes it difficult to game plan against.
Sure.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And that's what I think at its core makes this offense actually kind of unique. And when it's working, sort of effective. It hasn't worked in a great long while, but the offense is truly a combination of being very complex and also very predictable, right?
Mm-hmm.
You kind of know what's coming, but because you can't see it, because there isn't a whole lot to look at on film that it gives you that disparity to kind of base your game plan on, it could be really, really effective in the right circumstances.
Agree.
Alex Padilla, now notably leaving to go elsewhere, Padilla, however you want to call him, he said it takes like a year to get the offense. It doesn't seem that complex. He said it takes a year.
Right.
Takes a good year. Which
Well,
I think
I don't think that's a statement that is, deserving of ridicule.
No. I'm just saying there's outside of that headline, which is Iowa's offense stinks, there's a lot that gets lost. There's a lot of nuance there.
Sure.
That I think we need to call out.
Please.
And so I shouldn't have to say this. The other aspect to that quote, about being predictable is you can be Georgia and be predictable and still win the national championship, right? Being predictable, being complex isn't a bad thing, but both things have to work together. Mm-hmm. This is all a very, very long way of saying, Dan, what you probably already know. Iowa was really bad on offense.
Yep.
And a lot of that stems from an offensive line that was very bad. Bill Connolly tracks something called blown block percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa was 119th in the nation.
Yeah.
They were also 129th in pressure rate allowed, despite not facing that many blitzes. They were just bad. Mm-hmm. They were bad up front. Again, back to the pressure thing. It also means that this line just was not holding its own. Shout out Caleb Johnson, by the way, the running back. 5.5 yards per carry in spite of the line, not because of it.
Right.
Just nobody feared that line. And as a result, everything collapsed around it. So you got the bad line. Predictably, Iowa turns to screen passes in the passing game. They were good at those. And I'll credit Brian Ferentz for one thing. People were clamoring, bring back the tight end a little bit more in the passing offense. You noted they had some really good ones. They got away from that for a little while. Brian Ferentz brought that back.
Sure.
He
Sam
brought
Laporta
that back.
Was the entire offense. A poor man's Michael Mayer.
Targets.
Yeah.
84 targets.
Mm-hmm.
You need the sure-handed safety valve when you've constantly got guys breathing down the neck of your quarterback. And that's what Sam Laporta was.
Right.
The problem was they just couldn't go downfield at all. You can throw the screen pass. You can throw to Sam Laporta 84 times. But Spencer Petras did not have time. And when he did, He didn't have receivers who were consistently getting open, or for that matter, staying healthy. They were really banged up in the receiving core. It's so easy to bang on Spencer Petras. We did our fair share of it here. I blame the coaching staff. This is a coach problem.
Yeah.
They need more playmakers. Everybody needs more playmakers. This is a coach problem. It feels like we have reached this point of diminishing returns with Kirk Ferentz. Yeah. And I said Kirk, not Brian. Not Brian.
Sure.
Brian's part of it, but this is Kirk. They are running the same offense, at least the same rushing offense that they did back in 1999. Now it just happens that they're worse at recruiting. They're worse at developing line talent. They're worse at developing receivers and quarterbacks. And all of the recruiting stuff got harder around them.
Yeah.
With NIL and the portal. So it is not easier. If anything, it's way harder. And they have now shown over the course of many seasons that they are just not up to snuff when it comes to developing that talent. I think this season will be a pivotal season. I don't know what they're going to do with Brian Ferentz in the offseason. Iowa fans, of course, want him to be gone. Many Iowa fans want him to be gone, not all. We will, I hope, get some clarity on that. Perhaps there will be a decision. Perhaps there will be hires and they'll do something to restructure the coaching staff. I don't know. But I don't think any of that's going to solve this problem. I think we're going to be right back where we started this time next year. It will be pivotal because they're bringing in Cade McNamara. And Cade McNamara is a Big Ten winning, a playoff caliber quarterback, right?
Yep.
And so I have not detected in the Iowa community this notion that, bringing in Cade McNamara is going to fix this thing. No, I don't think people are saying that, to be fair. But I do think that if you bring Cade McNamara in, if you put him in this offense, if again the offense stinks, suddenly there it is clear as day. It is just hard to ignore the blinking red light that is, okay, we've swapped out quarterbacks. Okay, we brought in new talent. We've done a bunch of other steps outside of swapping out coaches. This has to be a coaching thing.
Right.
I don't know how you fix this other than bringing in new people to run the offense. Maybe you bring in a dual threat quarterback, somebody who can run a little bit more. Mm-hmm. They haven't really tried that at all. That would be a nice touch. But short of that and changing just the personnel, it is not clear to me outside of a full-fledged coaching change what is going to do this. Like, Brian Ferentz is very, very popular to dunk on.
Mm-hmm.
It's January 25th. We're recording this. Again, by the time people listen to this, there is a chance he won't be the offensive coordinator. I read places that perhaps there would be a role for him in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know doing what, but perhaps there'd be a role for him somewhere in the league. But unless Kirk Ferentz is content to give somebody else complete, full autonomy over the offense, over the recruiting efforts, personnel, we're going to be right back here next year. Set your watch.
Okay, couple things. I think I might be a little bit more optimistic than you are with regard to Iowa's offensive possibilities.
Okay.
The couple things are that you're mostly 100% right. This is an Iowa offense that's built to just sit on teams, right?
Yeah.
And then this year, the offensive line had tiny little butts. It becomes a little harder to sit on people when you don't have the mass and talent to do so. Spencer Petras was not that good. He missed open dudes. And you can say, well, that guy was a walk-on. That guy was a walk-on. He ran the wrong. All that's fair. All that's reasonable. I think they had one scholarship receiver available in that South Dakota State game.
Very banged up at receiver.
Extremely thin. Obviously, your guy Chuck Sizzle made his way to Purdue. That was a loss that I don't think Iowa fans anticipated being that big, having the season that he did for Purdue. But when your offensive identity is tied to one specific thing, like it is having NFL caliber offensive linemen, and you just don't, and they just don't perform, and then your quarterback's under fire, and he is already dealing with accuracy issues with a big arm, and then you're not able to develop receivers downfield consistently, and you do go to the tight end a little bit more, and that's all good. The stunning thing about Iowa's offense not being fine, not being the 73rd best in America, is their defense consistently puts them in such an incredible position to succeed with the sheer number of turnovers forced, right? That opposing defenses should be gassed.
It's demoralizing.
From their own offense turning the ball over and Iowa getting the ball in plus position or an advantageous position, whatever, offensively. that you are essentially trying to push around a tired defense if you're the Iowa offense because of the Iowa defense. Iowa finished the season, you mentioned, first in points per drive allowed. So even the bar is so low for Iowa's offense. You score 20 a game. How many times would they have won this year? What would their record have been with scoring merely 20 points a game? They lose to Michigan because they gave up 27. They would have beaten Illinois. They still would have lost to Ohio State, and they would have lost to Nebraska, and they would have beaten Iowa State. So you're adding 3 wins to their season. So they go from being a horrifically disappointing, what would they finish, 7-5 during the regular season, 8-5 with the bowl win, to 11-2? What? And, well, I guess they're making the Big Ten championship game.
10-2,
11-3, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's 20 points. It's 20 points. And so the optimism is Cade McNamara should be more accurate than Spencer Petras. I don't think Eric All is a game changer just because they had Sam Laporte and they've had good tight ends. So I don't think that changes the calculus for Iowa's offense. They're going to be healthier at receiver. They didn't hit the portal especially hard. They lost a key corner who they were expecting to do good things this year and a key linebacker, but they weren't shredded on defense. They lost some guys on offense, which is to be expected. If you just have a more accurate quarterback and you're a little bit better along the offensive line with age and you're a little bit healthier at receiver, even losing Sam Laporta, I think you can get to 20 a game.
I hope you get to 20. Like, I'm not rooting against Iowa. I appreciate the funnies we're able to make. I'm not rooting against Iowa. I am hesitant to just sort of pencil in, though, Cade McNamara as this huge upgrade. He's definitely better than Spencer Petras, okay?
Yeah.
For sure. But I come back to what Alex Padilla himself said. The offense takes a while to grasp.
Sure.
So unless they're going to try and simplify that, I could see a world in which Cade McNamara is also scrambling to try, like not literally scrambling, but trying to figure this thing out, trying to figure it out on the fly because it is complex, it is nuanced. If they don't make a serious change, it might not matter who the quarterback is.
Yeah, and look, the defense is going through changes, so they might not be able to be counted on to be the best offense on the Iowa roster. Yeah. But even so, this is an Iowa team so entrenched in its identity that I always anticipate guys being able to step up on this defense. So, yeah, I'm a little bit more optimistic, but I think you're absolutely right. It's a vision thing. This worked for us in 2016. It worked for us in 2018. It worked for us in 2021. Like, the problem is you have to be looking forward. And it doesn't seem like Iowa ever is on offense over the course of a year. You'll see a game where like, oh, they're running some motion stuff and they're going outside zone a little bit more and it's working. But over the course of a year, and look, we saw tight ends and receivers run open and get missed. We saw that. That's not on Brian Ferentz se.
It's not. I think the thing that I came away from this deeper dive, having more of an appreciation for, it isn't all on Brian Ferentz. Brian Ferentz is the poster boy for it. I understand. If I were a fan of Iowa, I would want him gone too.
I think it is on Brian. Okay,
it's not all on Brian Ferentz.
Not all.
Right? Spencer Petras still is missing open players. The line is bad. He didn't have time to go down the field. These long developing deep routes never had a chance because the pressure rates were so high.
Right.
It is on the coaching staff for sure that they have not developed that talent to a greater degree. That Spencer Petras has been in this quote unquote complex system for however many years, and he's not really gotten better.
Right.
That's on the coaching staff. But it's not all unfair. I think a lot of this stems back to, as you said, just the inability to change a vision thing. So much of what they're doing is 20, 30 years old that it's not a great surprise that we'd be here at this moment in 2023.
It's wild. It's wild that they're not at least below average on offense.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating. Can I stay on that same theme?
Sure.
Can you give me the power drill again?
Of course I can. That sounded the way that you're like, give me that power drill.
Give me the drill. Let's talk about A&M.
Okay.
Let's talk about A&M. The common thread here being willingness to change, right?
Mm-hmm.
A&M 97th in points per drive on offense, 34th points per drive allowed on defense. They went 5-7. The only team of the 5 that we're going to talk about today that missed a bowl, didn't go to a bowl game at all. So context is very important. A&M saw an incredible infusion of talent via the 2022 class via the portal. That was the dominant narrative coming into the 2022 season, at least in the SEC West. Best recruiting class of all time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Sure.
Beyond that, though, the reality, if you look back a year, is that A&M was really beat up in 2021. And the hope was that they'd be a little luckier on that front in 2022. They most definitely were not. Okay? No. They were very banged up again in 2022. Max Johnson and Haynes King both got hurt. That's how we got Connor Wegman, which I happen to like Connor Wegman a lot through 8 touchdowns, no picks. I love Connor Wegman. I love regular Wegmans. I just got my grocery order earlier today.
Not a sponsor, could be.
Not a sponsor, very much could be.
Yeah.
Right. So that maybe that was a bit of silver lining. You don't like seeing guys go down, but they found Connor Wegman. I think he's probably the guy moving forward. But outside of that, you had Anais Smith going down on September 24th for the season. That was just a crushing loss because of his versatility within this offense. The interior line, Dan, very, very beat up. We had some guys going down for the year up front as well. Another kind of Caleb Johnson situation where you had a running back in Devin Achane, who was just had a great season in spite of the line, not because of it. Even he was in a boot before the end of the season.
Yeah, when the line was healthy, though, they did good things. I think it's much more a Jimbo architecture and misevaluation of Haynes King and Max Johnson.
Yeah. Absolutely. You can't chalk the whole thing up to injuries, but we do need to at least start there.
Sure.
It is definitely deeper than that. Injuries certainly did not help. A&M did a good job getting the most out of that rushing attack. I want to give credit where it's due. As the year wore on, they were not good to start the year. But even despite the injuries, they were able to, I think, get to like 40th nationally in terms of their success rates on the ground. Devin Achane's stats don't really do him justice. We called him out at our live show in Atlanta. I just want to circle
He's
back
a hero. He's absolutely heroic. Yeah.
Beyond the injury thing, though, Stu Mandel, our friend from The Athletic, said it best in a tweet or in an article. I forget what it was back in September. He says, Jimbo's got the 5-star recruits. He's got the defense. His offense is stuck in 2013. And this time there's no Jameis Winston to bail him out. And that has been the story for Jimbo for a while now, not just this past season, but adaptability has been the ongoing problem. It really came to a head this year, though. Mm-hmm. One example, Jimbo stated that he wants to run more up-tempo. He said it somewhere. He wants to run 70 to 80 plays a game. You know how many plays they ran in the loss to App State? I think I guess.
51.
38.
Not good enough.
38. And the thing is, they've got the players if they want to go more up-tempo.
Yeah.
But they have just chosen to not adjust, to not play that style of offense. And I don't know why. Maybe I need to read more as to the rationale there, but Jimbo said it. They just haven't really done it. The bigger picture here is that Jimbo, as Stu alluded, is running a very old system. They built, they released, they retired a whole version of the PlayStation in the time that Jimbo's been running the same damn offense.
We're juggling the 7 placemats of plays in front of him with the reading glasses. Yeah.
It's unbelievable. This is a system that has not emphasized quick reads for quarterbacks, for new quarterbacks to the system. It has not emphasized big plays. It has not allowed the athleticism of all those 5 stars to shine in any appreciable way.
Yeah.
Just as an example, right? Haynes King. Big deal coming out of high school, right? Haynes King, we talked to Sam Kahn Jr. from The Athletic, talked about the appreciation that Jimbo had for Haynes King and how he really felt like he got it. Haynes King was 13 of 20 for 97 yards against App State. He dropped back 24 times. He was pressured only 3 of them, blitzed approximately 0. They didn't blitz him at all.
Mm-hmm. Why would you?
Fumbled twice. 97 yards passing. So what does that tell me? That tells me too much is going on.
Why you got to talk about old stuff, Ty? Why you got to talk about old stuff? Yeah.
No, this is why. There's too much going on. It's too much going on. He didn't adjust the offense to Haynes King. And as a result, you get lines like that. He ran it for 27 yards. Okay, he was over 100 total. But he's just not making the most out of the talent that he's got on hand. And that's not to say Haynes King is going to be all-world everything at his next stop. But clearly, He left a lot out there. What happened, what I think Jimbo is trying to do to fix this, and I give him credit because for a good long time he was stubborn and he didn't change, and now he's basically fired himself as offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
He hired Bobby Petrino, which,
yeah,
okay, among other things.
Mr. Stable.
Among many other things, Bobby Petrino was known for being a good offensive mind, and he also was known for being adaptable.
Sure.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is a guy who coached both Lamar Jackson and Brian Brom. I can't imagine two quarterbacks that are more different in terms of skill set.
I was thinking you were going to say Ryan Mallett, but continue. I was like, Ryan Mallett and Lamar Jackson, quite different. Yeah.
Yeah, but in almost all cases, the quarterbacks have been very successful.
Yeah.
In his system. And he has been good at organizing around the skill sets of players to make an offense hum, not vice versa. So, whereas I am not at all confident on the Iowa side, I am pretty confident on this one. I don't think Bobby Petrino is a role model. I don't think young coaches should aspire to be Bobby Petrino. But I think Bobby Petrino makes sense for a variety of reasons at A&M. And I am very optimistic that he can turn this thing around pretty quickly.
See, I'm confident in the framing, but not the insulation, right?
Okay. Fair.
I am confident in the offensive roster. Look, you have a team besieged by the flu late in the year, right?
Yeah.
You have a defense missing key guys, a bunch of freshmen on both sides of the ball, suspension, and rumors of smoking pot in the locker room or whatever, and then 25 portal guys total. Completely, it seems to me, misleading number. A misleading number because they lose some key guys. I think they lost a corner in Smoke Bowie to Georgia, Denver Harris, but a lot of the guys, Anthony Lucas, who was a big-time recruit, he's over to USC to play defensive line. But a lot of the guys they lose in the portal were not necessarily big contributors. And whether they were suspended this past year as freshmen, whether they were recruited by another assistant coach, whatever, it was not an avalanche of, they lost these 7 key dudes on offense to the portal. It wasn't that. And so I'm with you. Again, the framing is there. The insulation is what I'm worried about, just because you're talking about a still relatively inexperienced quarterback, Evan Stewart, who has All-American caliber potential, an offensive line that has a good amount of talent in front of it when healthy, and they obviously up front, especially on the inside, collapsed last year due to injury, that when you bring that back with, at least on the field, in the booth, a very, very good offensive mind in Bobby Petrino, now in a role that's kind of new, right? No. That he has to defer to a head coach, and he is not the guy. That's different and that's new. Obviously, we know every situation with Bobby Petrino kind of ends the same combustible way. But there's every reason to believe with how Moose Muhammad played last year, and he is wearing an armband and is suspended or something. There's always something.
Wow.
The defense should be very good. It should be another situation where the offense needs to be merely fine. It needs to go for more 4th and 3s in plus territory. When you're on the 41 and it's 4th and 2, get a quick screen Evan Stewart. See what he can do. See if he's 2.5 yard capable. I cannot stress enough that there is. I mean, look, the recruiting class coming in includes the number 1 running back in the country, Reuben Owens. A top linebacker. So. Look, they lose a couple key pieces in the secondary, but with DJ Durkin, again, on the field, excellent defensive mind. Let's limit it to that for this specific discussion.
Sure.
Uses players in interesting ways, runs like the 3-2-6 and, almost all of that vaunted defensive class from the year before, headlined by Walter Nolan. Now they bring in the number 1 defensive lineman in the country and David Hicks. There should be depth there. There should be anger. There should be tackling. There should be pressure. This should be a team. Should be.
Qualified.
That's why I say frame, but not necessarily frame and foundation, but not necessarily insulation and tile and cabinets. It should be a team that looks closer to what they look like because of Connor Wegman, because of a fresh start, what they look like against LSU than what they look like in the previous 11 games. Yeah. We hope, we presume, we can see how that's the case. But football games are or football seasons seem to be won in the off season, seem to be won in locker rooms. And that's the problem right now with Texas A&M. It's getting everybody on the same page. It's getting everybody bought in. It's getting the culture right. It's getting basics right in terms of what the vision is for the offense. I'm extremely cautiously optimistic that A&M is going to take a nice step forward this year. Without their schedule in front of me, mind you.
Yeah, I feel reasonably confident that it will be better on offense.
Okay.
I feel reasonably confident on that front.
Okay, fair enough. They seem to be in a good place on defense and should continue to be.
And the recruiting is strong. The recruiting remains strong.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, they've got so much to work with. It is a situation where if you're an A&M fan and you're looking in and saying, "Wow, okay, we were nicked up 2 straight years, but to not make a bowl, to lose to App State, no disrespect to App State,
right?
Man, just can't help but feel underwhelmed by that. I don't know.
They're another one of those teams that magic number was 30, right? That they weren't really able to crack until the very end of the year against a Power 5 school. They score 30 against Auburn instead of 10. Great. They score 30 against Florida instead of 24. Well, they still lose, but it looks a little bit better. They score 30 or 31 or 32 against Ole Miss. They win that game. Ole Miss scores 31. They score 30-31 against South Carolina. They win that game. They score 30 against Alabama. They win that game. And so they have the capability on paper with 2x4s in lumber, in drywall. It's just everything else, putting it all together to build a winning house. So that's why I still worry. But yeah, the bar seems relatively low, and getting, again, all those placemats and pamphlets and reading glasses out of Jimbo Fisher's arms, I think is going to be a nice step forward.
It's a lot of pro style stuff that they've been running. We'll see what Petrino can do if he can move things forward. Give me that drill one final time, please.
Oh God, Ty.
Let's go to USC.
Let's go to SC. Fascinating team, which I think is, you like kind of put everything together that we've just talked about, and you kind of get USC. All of the different issues plaguing everybody, and there's a little bit of that in the USC chili cauldron.
The USC chili cauldron. I like that. First points per drive on offense.
Yeah.
111 points per drive on defense. So 11-1, lost the Pac-12 game to Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Lost the Cotton Bowl by 1 to Tulane. So finished with 3 losses, but 11-1 regular season, a big deal for Lincoln Riley. What USC fans got on offense was Oklahoma, right? You got Oklahoma. You got Caleb Williams, got a Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah.
You had the constant excitement that was Caleb Williams in the pocket, where you blitz him, he gets away, you sit back, he picks you apart. And you have, I think, this coming season, the number 1 overall draft pick in the 24 draft. That's who Caleb Williams is. And It's no secret at this point. The issue, though, for USC, we talk about marginal improvements on the Iowa side, right? Just marginal improvements make them so much better. Lincoln Riley has always known how to coach offense.
Mm-hmm.
This season was no different. Next season will be more of the same. What about defense? Is Alex Grinch the guy? Is what they're trying to do on defense hampered by talent? What is the source of that 111th points per drive allowed?
It's tackling and talent. It really is just, I mean, you saw it in the Utah games, plural, that what they gave up to Dalton Kincaid, the tight end. They were without Brant Keithy in that game and in the championship game, and without top flight receivers all year long, like Utah generally is. And it's USC seeing one thing, and that was that first Utah game. It's Dalton Kincaid for 215, however many yards he had in that game, and 37 catches, and then just getting run straight at in the championship game. It's unfortunate for USC to look back at what they were not able to do in the 2022 season. Another case of they had the offense go to the playoff without question. Number 1 scoring offense in America with the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. Average defense gets them to the playoff. Nope, they just need 2.5 more stops this year. I don't know how you get half a stop, but you know what I'm saying. So yeah, you're dead on. They didn't have an electric running back, which was, I think, the difference between this year's USC team and where Oklahoma teams, if you look at, Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine, guys like that. But otherwise, USC offensive line was very good. Obviously, the receivers, Jordan Addison, Mario Williams, et cetera, were very good. Defensively, they had one of the best edge rushers in the country who did help to cover up for some things and rush quarterbacks into making bad decisions, which a pretty good secondary, now without their best corner, who's moved on to the next level, Mekhi Blackman, was able to take advantage of. Tuli Pulatu. Tuli, I just call him Tuli. 20 and a half tackles for loss, I believe, is how he finished the season. He was a revelation and was the clear defensive MVP of a team that could not tackle, could not get pressure otherwise, couldn't play sideline to sideline, and guys who could kind of sometimes, like linebacker Eric Gentry, got beat up for longer stretches of the season. And then the secondary, which did a good job in this defense of confusing some teams and jumping into passing lanes when counted on to come up and make a tackle, didn't. And so this was a USC team who kind of gave the season away. It's year one. And so it's all kind of gravy to win that number of games in year one of a new coach after falling to the depths that they did. Yeah, 4-8 under Clay Helton the year before has to be seen as an overwhelmingly positive season for USC, all things considered. But still, the delta between the offense and defense. This was, some of the numbers here are just kind of absurd. 116th in the nation in third and out, 3 and out percentage. They put up the numbers that they did or didn't, playing exactly 2 top 20 offenses, UCLA and Utah. They weren't a good blitzing team. They were 120th in tackling success rate. They decided to keep Alex Grinch, which fine, okay. He's had good defenses. 2020 at Oklahoma, I think it was 2018 at Wazoo with Hercules Mataafa, both very strong. Ronnie Perkins in 2020. Those teams got the hell off the field.
Yeah.
USC's defense did not this year. Now, USC is in a place that North Carolina, maybe Iowa, A&M aren't necessarily. And that's USC has decided we are not necessarily going to get better on defense through the recruiting trail or the high school recruiting trail in the ways that some of these other programs do. We are going to attack the portal hard. Now, they go after Mason Cobb, Oklahoma State, their best linebacker. That should be a difference maker. They got better on the offensive line after losing a bunch, but on defense, I'm pulling this up right now just to remind myself of names. I mentioned Anthony Lucas coming in from Texas A&M. That's right. Jack Sullivan, Purdue. They pulled in Arizona's best corner and a linebacker from Georgia State, who was, I think, reasonably well regarded. So they are plugging some holes. The problem is, plugging some holes.
Yeah, there you go.
Just in terms of a sheer roster and numbers, the better defenses, especially with how explosive USC's offense will again be this year. USC's offense scores too quickly, right? You hear that phrase at the end of games like, they left too much time. They scored too quickly. USC does not have the depth and talent on defense to have an explosive offense. And so Caleb Williams is too good for his own defense. USC is so much more explosive than they are efficient. That, they bring in Marshawn Lloyd. Maybe he's somebody who could just keep the chains moving continuously on offense and give the defense a little bit of rest. Caleb Williams is too good at buying himself time and launching the ball downfield successfully and giving his own defense no time to catch its breath. And so I don't see that improving this year, though I do see the defense as a whole. They have to get better. They have to get better than what they showed against Utah and Vegas in the Pac-12 championship game. It was a pathetic performance. They let Tulane back in the bowl game. Do we even recap the Tulane USC game? Did that fall into like a weird gap?
We didn't do Tulane and we didn't do the Rose Bowl because of the timing.
Right. So we'll recap the Rose Bowl and the Cotton Bowl in mid-June. Yeah. They're going to get better on defense. The schedule is pretty nice early on to get the new guys in and gelling. They get Oregon in Autzen, but that's later on in the season. UCLA is going to be a new quarterback. Utah, I believe they have this year. I have the schedule in front of me.
Notre Dame mid-season.
Yeah, they have Notre Dame. So that's Notre Dame. It's October this year, right?
Yeah.
It's October and Sam Hartman. So they'll have time to figure out how they want to utilize the new guys and how to improve upon last year. The problem to me is the Alex Grinch defense specifically is, the slants and stunts and, not that it's guessing, but it's kind of guessing up front sometimes to try to get a reaction advantage. That I'm just not a huge fan of that system when you could have the talent and system that USC could have. They've brought in exactly one blue chip defensive lineman in the last 2 years from the high school ranks. It's very weird to me that USC can't sort of span the globe and find good defensive linemen out of high school. So until that happens, which maybe it will, I don't know. It's hard to see if it, the early returns aren't great. It's hard to see USC getting to the level at which USC as an institution, USC fans, like, they're not going to become Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, whatever we saw from Clemson recently. They're just not if they can't build a stacked defensive front. They just don't have that, and it doesn't look like that's coming anytime soon.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see. I mean, Caleb Williams will make USC worth watching every game that he plays.
Yeah.
But to your point of him being too good for opposing defenses.
No, for his own defense.
For his own defense,
Yeah.
he's too good for opposing defenses as well. I mean, you talk about the line. The line was pretty good this season. Probably better than I gave them credit for when we did our preseason stuff, which we got murdered on YouTube talking about the line.
That's fine.
But
I love them all.
But Caleb Williams faced a lot of pressure this season. They weren't great at protecting him, and he was still great at getting the ball out and obviously putting up Heisman caliber numbers. 110th in pressure rate allowed, this offensive line.
They hit the portal hard. Ethan White just signed from Florida. So I think if we're believers in what they've added in the portal, I think at absolute minimum, there should be a solid offensive line this year.
Yeah, I agree.
Here's my USC question. We can agree Caleb Williams is excellent. That's settled business. Yes?
Sure. Yeah.
Is Caleb Williams fully excellent in the way you want him to be excellent? Is Caleb Williams a little bit of my whole game is buying time to make the A+ play, and does he have 7 B+ arrows in his quiver per game where it's just him stepping up and hitting a comeback for 13 yards?
Right.
Is there, in the way that like you watch CJ Stroud and you're like, oh my God, the command of college football offense that CJ Stroud has as he throws it in rhythm to a streaking so-and-so up the seam.
You're saying, is the plane at USC built a little too much out of Caleb Williams?
Yeah,
and
like
his skill set, his ability to create time for himself.
Right. Like, is it too much of just the freelance Caleb Williams buying time and hitting Mario Williams downfield? Or, is it counting on Caleb Williams to make 6 great plays and then everything else is whatever? And is it something that's going to bite USC when, we saw it against Oregon State that they were able to get enough pressure to force Caleb Williams into making quick decisions, and he struggled. He was not accurate, and he really had difficulties reading a pretty good Oregon State defense. That he hasn't progressed in the B+ way, the A- way, as much as I'd hope. But look, I'm an Oregon fan. Maybe this is me wearing green and yellow goggles. There is something to that, I think, though.
Well, there's something to being so reliant on one player. We talked about it with Drake May.
Yeah.
Right? Drake May is obviously a much, much different case here. But, anytime you're that reliant on one player, it can come back to bite you.
Well, it's not just the reliant on him. It's has Caleb Williams himself progressed in that way where you're like, why?
Well, there's
making the easy play.
There's no doubt to me that he got a hell of a lot better between his first season at quarterback with Oklahoma.
Probably, yeah.
And this past season. He won the Heisman Trophy. I think this season will be very telling, though. This season will tell us more.
Yeah.
Will tell us more about
We'll know more by December.
Yeah. We will absolutely know more by next December, to say the least. All right. The drill one more time, please, just to put a bow on this thing.
Can you fly the plane and land it?
What a movie, man. What a movie.
It's
So
best.
quotable. Gosh. Solidverbal@gmail.com is the email address. Write in, let us know what we missed, what we got right, what you think we could do better the next time. We'd appreciate your feedback. Don't forget to subscribe to the show. Again, every Tuesday and Thursday episodes drop to the public feed. If you are ever so inclined, going out to verballers.com. That is our Patreon. That is where you can get access not only to this show and all of our episodes a little bit early. You can watch as we do them live. You can also get access to the bonus content that we put out through the off season. So that includes a weekly Q&A episode that we record bright and early. Everybody can watch us do that live on Thursday mornings. We have yet to get organized around this, but we will before long. We put together, bi-monthly off-topic episodes where we bring on a guest. And last year we talked about the Webb telescope. We talked about pizza. We talked about a variety of other things. So we will be doing much the same here in the off season. And I've got ideas. I know you do as well, but nothing that we can announce as of now. Just stuff that I think the Verballerhood can look forward to.
We are building this winter, spring, and summer tie. Brick.
That's right.
By brick. That's what we do. This is solid verbal season, Ty.
Solid verbal SZN, you know it. All right. It's snowing here. Hopefully
Same.
not wherever you are.
No,
but stay warm, everybody. Enjoy the weekend that is, I guess, championship weekend in the NFL, if that's the thing that you're into. That's the thing that you're into. For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein. For myself, Ty Hildenbrand. Happy half birthday, Dan.
Thank you.
Stay solid.
Peace.